Turn off the set.
This is the Web Platform Podcast, episode 112, Polymer Summit 2016. Woohoo!
Yeah. Right.
I wish I had gotten to go, actually. It looked like a lot of fun watching some of the videos.
It was a great time.
On the panel today, it's just myself, Eric Isaacson, and we have two guests today who spoke at the Polymer Summit from Comcast. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Chris Lorenzo.
And I'm John Riviello.
We're both front-end engineers here. To say a little bit of our title, we write a lot of front-end code. We lead some teams. We do a bunch of front-end projects for Comcast. And we've both been here for now 9 years each.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness.
I know. We're so young.
A lot of technology changes in those 9 years.
So much stuff here.
Yeah, all your table-based layouts are gone now.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time getting rid of those tables.
Oh, man. So the summit, you were over at the summit in London, right?
Yes.
And
we didn't get to go the year before.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you knew, because it's Amsterdam, and I heard that was amazing in 2015. Like, has much changed in the technology since? And just for people who don't know what technology we're talking about mostly the Polymer library and web components in particular, which is what the summit focused on mostly.
Yeah, so basically, like, Polymer 1.0 came out, which was the main thing for the summit 2015. And since 1.0 to 1.7, not much has really changed, right? It's like slow revisions to fix some things, maybe some performance enhancements. But most of the feature base has been there. The exciting new changes are when we get from the 1.0 to the 2.0. So that's what I'm excited about, is the 2.0 changes.
Yeah, and all the tooling that comes with that. Like, there's been so many, as the team kind of said during the summit, there's been all these little tools that they've sprinkled throughout the year, and they've really worked on having an actual tools team to focus on that and consolidate that into their Polymer CLI tool or something like that.
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
And it's interesting because you have like the Polymer guys, and they build the Polymer library, but there's a lot more to it, right? Which is all those other components that they have to write, the build tools, the vulcanization, the lint, the new editor thing that they created.
Hydrolysis.
Like,
a lot of
there's so many side things that they built, which are the crux of like how important Polymer is versus just the library. It's all the other support tools that are important.
Yeah, they have a master plan, it seems.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting to me too, like with the CLI, getting some popularity not long ago, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. I think Justin did a talk on that, on the tooling in particular.
Mm-hmm.
The second day, like I think right before you guys did, so you might have missed it. I don't know if you did.
We did. Luckily there was a half-hour break, so we were in depth listening to the tools talk, which was really exciting to hear all the stuff that they announced around that.
Yeah, it's really hard when you're a guest speaker at a conference such as Polymer Summit, which is kind of a big one, and you go the second day. So the first day you're like kind of watching stuff, but you're also stressed out about your talk. So you're like,
It's so true.
Yeah. You finish your talk and you're like, oh, there's other talks after me. Who cares about those guys?
Yeah. Those were some great talks after us.
Yeah, there were some interesting talks.
It's interesting. Like I love the Polymer team. Like I met probably half of the current team like last year, and it's just amazing. Like they've shipped stuff out so fast. Like there's just so much goodies. They come out so quick. And I'm like the type of guy, when I code, I take my time. I want to and their quality and the speed is just amazing.
Yeah,
they have some smart people.
Yeah, like what was it? The guy that built the Monster Apps thing, Chris. They said
yeah,
it's been like 2 days of that thing, just going to it all.
Yeah, the Polymon.
Here's Polymon,
Dude, that guy's insane. But that's what it shows. Like even the new Elliot. Yeah, the new Elliot, the Elliot on the team. He came to visit Pen Apps, which is like a few blocks away from where we work. We're headquarters in Philadelphia, by the way, for everybody watching. But he came out, and he's from MIT, and just really incredibly smart, and just shows the difference between MIT people and us common people who write for the web.
Yeah, the caliber is pretty impressive. And Chris actually, speaking of which, he was on the show. We talked about the polymer elements and accessibility in elements not too long ago. I guess it was maybe like 7 or 8 months ago. Him and Dan Friedman came on, and that was, yeah, they have so much knowledge. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we consider ourselves average front end developers.
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. And then when you go to these events, and even if you speak, like I've spoken at a few, not as high caliber probably, but I've spoken at a few, and it's kind of like you're in your own celebrity land,
right,
where you're looking around and you're like, oh my gosh, that's this person who did this in JavaScript.
That's Rob Dodson.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Eric.
Yeah.
It's
all these smart people.
Oh, that's Paul Lewis.
And then there's us.
Yeah.
Like Paul.
And they're like, who is this creepy fan following me around?
Yeah, I would just stand there and like interject and be like, "Hi, I'm Chris Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Hi, can I shake your hand?" I'm a big fan.
And then Rob always had to run away to some, someone's got to do a video. I need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings a good point too. Like, because you guys, I heard, did really fantastic. I didn't see the whole talk, but you guys did really great there. And there was other groups that were there from different places. Like Vaden had Yoni and Marcus, and there was ING was there. So they're allowing people to speak at these events that are like Google events, which I don't know if this is done before, but I thought that was interesting. What was kind of like your takeaway from like why they had that, and what benefits did it give developers?
Yeah, I think a big part of what they were trying to do at this summit this year was basically not only introduce the new tools and kind of State of the Union, but also show that big companies are in fact using Polymer in production to ship products for millions of customers. So it's not just this experiment that it was, a few years ago when it was, releasing experimental versions of this. Now it's actually, a real product, and people are using it and relying on it. And also for a company like us, when we were, just being an attendee was awesome. It was like when Ben spoke the first day from ING, we're just like, oh, this is great to hear another company at a large scale talking about using Polymer, going through the same struggles that we did and kind of arriving at the same conclusions as opposed to best practices. So that was really valuable for us, and I'm sure for other companies as well that are either thinking about using Polymer or using it, to hear from big companies that are successfully using Polymer in production.
Yeah. And, it's important to note, like, you have all the Google developers who are building the library, and they have example apps with their Polymer shop, but there's a big difference between doing example apps versus actually building a real live site that people are using, and facing some of the industry challenges that we faced. So just being able to talk to them face to face and share those thoughts is important.
Yeah, the scale too. I mean, I thought it was a really brilliant idea to do the Polymon thing. A little cheeky because it's, Pokemon sort of, but the thing about that is so many moving pieces, and it's so like scalable that I thought that was a really good choice.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys feel about that whole Polymon?
Chris
had to stop playing Pokemon Go for a few minutes to download.
Yeah, I'm all excited about the Halloween update and getting extra candy. But no, I thought the Polymon was awesome because it really like hit a bunch of check boxes as far as showing like progressive web apps, the speed of mobile. Like Polymer can build something like really complicated and yet make it kind of simple.
QR code scanning, service workers, they basically hit every little checkbox of like cool new technology that we want to demo. But it also goes into like web development today. I said during my talks before, is like it's Angular or React, and people have these giant frameworks, and whenever they build a new website, they think, oh, I got to pull in Angular or React. And we have examples even inside of Comcast where it's just one page, like
I've seen them.
Like, and they pulled in Angular for that, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, you don't need a whole framework to serve one single page. Like,
it always reminds me of like when we used to use jQuery, and we built out at this one place I was at, we built out a whole system. I've talked about this before, of like classes, and we used observer patterns, and we had MVC. And so you'd have like a model, a view, a controller for each little JavaScript thing. So if you had one page that you had to do that was by itself, you needed at least 6 JavaScript files, including tests, right?
Yeah.
Just to do something as simple as an event handler.
Right.
Yeah. So it gets a little out of hand. To be fair, React is just the view layer. Like I've been using that now with web components, and it's been a pleasant experience. I find that if you're really into app development and wanting to build that stuff quickly, React is really good with its component model. But if you want to share code across, we're not at least here. We're not at that level where we can have separate component developers versus application developers. And that's really important if you want to get it to be versatile across different areas of your company. And so that leads me to say, you know, like you at Comcast, it sounds like you're getting other developers to use these web components in Polymer. Like, how are you going about doing that? How can I learn from you?
No, I think that's actually one of the challenges that we're still facing, which is like you have the corporate hierarchy that is Comcast and the big machine, and there's a lot of benefits from having this shared component repo, but you know how all of our products are done, they're like vertical stacks, right? Which is like, I care about my Xfinity having this new thing as quickly as possible, and whether home gets a benefit from having that same component, I really don't care because I need my thing to ship. So really it's a matter of lead engineers taking a step back and saying, hey, we could get great benefits across the board if we had a team building these shared components that everyone can use.
Yeah, and we're seeing right now, we're also able to, we have one team that's basically working on 3 related products simultaneously. So it's obviously a lot easier for that team to kind of build shared components because they're more aware of each team's needs. And basically what we're doing, because of course, like every team here that started with Polymer, like each built their own button the first time. We're just like, no, we all need to share a button. This is like, you know, the point. So we've like transitioned components to these shared repositories, but when we're building new components, really focusing on like how do we get teams to share them and like think about, okay, we know we need it for this one project because that's why we're building it. What other projects need it? And basically try to build it with that sharing in mind. And then it's been going okay so far. I think there's still some room for improvement, but when we did move, we've tried like, do we have one big repo of all the components that we share? And now we've moved to basically one organization in our internal GitHub Enterprise setup that has a repo for each component. And that's really been helpful because then teams can see all the components, they can look at the demo pages and see how they work. And it's really easy just to kind of, you know, bump up the version there and pull it into your project. We've been doing that a lot, and that's been going well. And then talking to other companies at the Polymer Summit that are doing it that way, that definitely seems like a clear direction to go with that. And
so you have your own like NPM, or you just pull it from Git directly?
We just pull from Git directly, yeah. So we have like, we actually created our own Polymer Labs organization and Polymer organization in Comcast internally for our internal GitHub Enterprise. So we basically have Polymer Labs is stuff that's like, just like Polymer Labs, kind of like here's stuff we're playing around with, but then the stuff in Polymer is like, this stuff is good to use in production. Anybody can feel free to take it. It's fully tested, there's demo pages.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm trying to position myself to do is like, to be able to jump between all the different projects that we have going on at Comcast. So it's important to have like some of your lead developers who are not dedicated to a specific project, but can go from like a current project, work on it for a couple weeks, jump to another one for a couple weeks, and really be able to see the patterns and build the web components and be like, hey, look, we already have this. We can all use the same thing. So knowing what's going on is hard.
At Comcast, do you have like your own style guide that's specific to a UX department?
Yeah, so we have our UX team. They're tasked with building the UX across all of our products. So that's the style guide for, you know, TVs, web, mobile, everything like that. So they have their defined set of standards internally that we then use, and then we basically, this is one of the reasons we pushed web components and sharing them initially was every team was building, you know, their version of the same styles in React and Angular and whatever. So now that we're using Polymer for this, we can then share those styles across the board because, you know, how many times has a button been recreated in Comcast? Who knows? You know, how many hours have been spent? We just have a shared button now that any team can use. Yeah. Even if they're using those other frameworks, it's so simple.
Yeah, initially I thought that I would take a similar route with like NPM internally. And then what happened is I've noticed that when I'm working on a project, you know, we're very much in the sprint. So like if we have to build out some component in React, let's say, it goes really fast. Like and it's just specifically, we're just thinking about what does this do for this application. There's no like, let's make sure it's accessible. There's no let's make sure that it's responsive first. You know, let's make sure it's working, you know, in this case, that it'll load all of its dependencies. It just, because that application knows about these components, it just works, and that lowers exponentially the developer time. So that's the challenge that I've seen, and this is not unique to here. This is a challenge across multiple places that don't have that mindset of component development versus application development.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was Ben's talk where he talked about being the assemblers first and craftspeople second.
That's the ING talk.
Yeah.
That was the one right after the keynote. That was probably one of the best talks at the Polymer Summit. And that notion of, you know, try to find a component that already exists and assemble a page. And if it doesn't exist, then you craft it and you build the component from scratch.
Yeah. That's got to be a lot of pressure too, to go on day one, right? You're coming on like after all the Googlers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not a Googler. And then, you know, you're getting up in front of how many people and talking about your stuff that you did. So kudos to him. That's pretty awesome. So as far as the summit itself, like, you know, 2.0 was the biggest thing I felt, because I saw that repeated several times in different contexts.
Yeah.
So what makes 2 so much different than 1.7, and why should we switch over to that?
Well,
or not?
Yeah, I think eventually you're going to have to switch over to it. Well, I mean, you could stick on 1.7, but the big reason was the V1 spec of the web components, like the custom elements changed. So, you know, the big thing that people don't understand is like the Polymer team has been pushing the web component spec forward. Like they're the ones who've gotten it from a spec to actually being implemented in all the browsers. And they finally got all the browser folks to agree on what the spec should be, and that's what the V1 spec is of web component. And Polymer 2.0 is just switching from the V0 spec to the V1 spec. And the great part about it is like they're removing like 15 kilobytes of size from the Polymer library by using a lot more of the vanilla look and feel of Web Components 2.0. And I think that's great.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, because really everything is speed. So I mean, the fact that it got smaller is huge. I think that's going to be a big motivating factor to move to 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like TypeScript, right? When you run it. So it takes all that stuff and.
You can use TypeScript, but you can also choose not to.
Okay.
An option. Which
I think you can do it. You can do it without TypeScript.
Okay, but like Angular, it's easier if you use TypeScript, right?
Correct. Yeah, Angular is written in TypeScript. Mm-hmm. Most of their documentation is TypeScript as well.
Mm-hmm. So the 2.0, I think, had a really big emphasis from what I saw on, like you said, the new specs, right? There's class syntax, right, which I think most of us have been doing already. Like I've been experimenting mostly with vanilla web components, some Polymer stuff, but I've just been using class syntax, so that's nice to see. The apply CSS, that's sort of one thing that I'm not sure. I really love apply, actually, and that's a spec by Tab Atkins, right? And it's on GitHub, but I don't think it's actually put into W3C yet.
It's not.
So, I mean, the fact that it's not in there yet says it's going to be a long time, even if it does get adopted. And it's only behind a flag currently in Chrome. So, unless it's updated in the last version, I haven't checked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that because that allows us, for those of you who don't know, apply. If you use Polymer, you know what it is. But apply is basically mix-ins for just regular CSS. So it's like using the CSS variable syntax, but grabbing several different rules and piecing them together.
I'll let John answer this one.
Yeah,
he loves.
And basically, yeah, I mean,
we call him Mr. CSS.
Yeah, I do love CSS from a long time ago, and especially the fact that if you're building a shared component and you want to basically give someone like a hook into, okay, if you want to style it some other way, here's your way to get in there. That's really the big benefit for it there. And Yeah, so I hope that that's going to get in soon. But like you said, if it's not even in the specs yet, that's going to take a while.
But I think the important thing, John he came on board to Polymer after me, but we used to use SAS a lot, like inside of Comcast, because SAS was really good at writing CSS.
Mhm.
And with like Polymer with CSS variables and mixins, you don't really need SAS as much, like with the whole web components thing, because there's not that much benefit to having it.
As much as the key, because a SAS mixin is still different from the add apply mixin. There's kind of a key difference there, because you can do more with a SAS mixin. But you can do so much with the CSS variables and add apply that you don't always need SAS. And most of our projects we're doing have it right now that are Polymer.
Yeah,
right.
I think somebody at Comcast did some lynda.com, something like that, like some.
How I changed Comcast to use SAS, and then
So definitely check out that one that John did at lynda.com. But the SAS stuff, I'm torn because I feel like this SAS will be around a long time. I think that it's just going to serve different purposes.
Yeah, because SAS still has value. It's just
people say to me too, like, oh well, why would I even care about CSS variables? And I'm like, well, they're at runtime. They're not at build time.
Right.
So you can do a lot more interesting things on runtime. People are like, well, what would I want to do? And it's and like, there is so much power in that. And the components is the biggest, the obvious thing to me is in, that Polymer has exploited this since, I think, forever, where it's, if you want to change certain specific styles, you don't have to actually munge the CSS inside of the component. You don't have to touch it at all. Right. You just overwrite the variable.
Yep.
Right, in your other file, like you don't even touch that component.
Yeah.
And that's really key, because if you have to update that component, we used to call it monkey patching in Ruby.
Right.
It's just not fun.
Yeah.
Because then you have to remember, what did I do? Let me check the log. I got to redo that now on top of this update, and it's just it can be really pain in the butt. And that's the probably the most obvious use case. But there's lots of different things at runtime that different effects you can do, and to have mix-ins at that level.
And theming is like the big thing that they have for it. So all the material design ones have different color layouts and stuff that you can do, and you can actually get like 20 different themes and just be like changing all your components to a different color spec. You could have that on the fly for all your users.
And just to be clear too, for those listening who aren't familiar with CSS variables, that is it's probably in 70% of the browser matrix, according to Can I Use, somewhere in there.
Chrome and Firefox.
Last I checked, it was 71.
We're looking it up. We're gonna fact check you there.
It's in Safari too. I think it's Safari 9 something, 9.1 or 9.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Firefox, Chrome, Safari.
Yep. Opera.
So
it's just.
I think it's just Edge right now.
Yep.
And IE 11 we have to support, right?
Yeah.
IE 10 in some cases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can use that now. And if you wanted to, you could use CSS Next with Postman or something. And you can get the mix-ins that way. Like, I've done that too, where you can get apply and variables for browsers that don't support that. But the cool thing about the variables is the fallback is just you repeat the thing right after it with the actual hex or whatever RGBA. Mm-hmm. and it's done. It'll be supported in all your browsers.
Yeah.
So I went on a tangent there, but I'm a big fan of CSS and SAS as well. So I had to make sure people understood that about what's new in Polymer with that. So the add apply is now going to be the standard apply syntax. Shadow DOM, and they're getting rid of shady DOM altogether.
Right.
Custom elements V1. Yeah. So do you have any thoughts on the custom elements V1 or Shadow DOM?
Yeah, custom elements V1 is just like they changed how to register a new component. The class syntax obviously is the big change. But yeah, most of it's just little names and stuff. Yeah. It's not that much dramatically different.
Yeah. The one concern though was the fact that they said they're going to remove the is attribute to be able to extend an existing.
We went off on that last podcast because it's very contentious, right? There's just,
with Safari is the ones who said they didn't want it.
And so for accessibility, like that is so key. It makes it so much easier to just extend a native element. And
well,
some screen readers just button elements. And that's not going to be an
Yeah,
option anymore.
that's the biggest problem.
I mean, we had Jeremy Jeremy Keith on last week, and he was saying that web components are the poster child of extensibility, but when they don't work, they fall back to a span. And a lot of people, when we build our components, we don't consider content, right, as much.
Right.
We're not transcluding things like we did in Angular as much. We're like adding attributes and dynamically just piecing things in there. And it made me really rethink strategy of how I'm going to build, content, right? If I'm going to pass content into a component.
Right.
So it's definitely something we need, whether it's the is syntax or something. It doesn't matter to me as long as we have some declarative interface for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for accessibility, falling back, it's stuff that needs to be solved. For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, components are pretty accessible from what I've seen, especially if you can if you're using the content strategy, right? You're definitely going to have SEO bonuses in that case.
Yeah, they work basically the same as DOM elements. So.
Yeah, and you could always use ARIA if you needed to.
Yep.
Yeah, which is what we're going to end up doing, I'm sure. But it was nice when we could just do
his
buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're using Polymer, you have access to all the different accessibility mixins or behaviors or whatever they're called at this point now.
Yeah.
Sure. Those will be popular moving forward, I bet.
So the other thing too is I've noticed this at the I/O talks too. There's this huge focus on the PWAs, progressive web apps, and Polymon being like a really good one for that. How did you feel about how progressive web apps were portrayed at the Polymer Summit?
So, yeah, even stepping back a little bit more here at Comcast, and this is one of the things that I don't think even our business and product folks fully understand or realize yet, is just how many users are actually showing up on mobile phones.
On the web.
On the web.
Right.
So I showed internally the other day is like 50% of our users are coming on a desktop browser and 50% are coming on a phone. And if our sites aren't fully responsive for phone users, like it's just an awful experience, right? It's something that we can't accept. And a lot of users maybe don't want an app yet. And I love Google's push for progressive web apps. I think it's extremely important. And I feel like it's Google attacking the App Store. Like they're trying to shut down the App Store model that Apple has made, like you have to do it this way. And the whole fact of being able to have the Chrome browser give us a lot more power as web developers to build something that feels like a native app is critical going forward. And if you look at the rest of the world, like they even talk about it, like in the United States, we have like the first world country mentality, but you have billions of users coming up in China and India who do not have access to really high-speed internet. Their major computing is phone and
less power for phones
and 3G internet. So you need your phones to be like your progressive web app stuff has to be very, very fast. You have to design for those mobile users. And I love some of the stuff that they're coming out with the service workers. What else we got? Service workers, app install banners,
the mobile
push notifications, GPS tracking, camera access. Like the big problem now that we have as developers is the great divide, right, between iOS and Android. On Android, we can do so much, and until Apple is like pushed over to say, hey, we need to do this on iOS, like progressive web apps are going to help 50% of the market.
Right. In the meantime, how do you feel maybe we could handle that? Are there other solutions?
My big thing internally is to start saying, hey, we should be building for the web. We should be building the web so that it's a progressive web app for Android users, and then we build a native iOS app. And there's really no way around it until iOS like comes about.
Yeah, still do like maybe a lesser version for iOS. Like there's some app feature that you can't get to. At least give the customer something.
You think you could share some code with like an Ionic or a or some native interface, Cordova or something.
Yeah, we've looked at
iOS.
Cordova wrappers with like the HTML inside. So we could probably do something with that effect. But it gets to the point where like then you're still going through the app store, right? You still have to publish your app, and then it's not a great experience. You know, there's a big difference between having to download an app versus just going to a site and it loading instantly. Like within a second, having the site up and you're using it.
No, definitely, it's not an easy problem to solve. On the progressive web apps, though, note too, it's also there's also the problem of like, you know, some people look at progressive enhancement differently in those type of applications because there's so much goodies, right, that you play with.
Right.
But we do need to be very considerate of, you know, building on things. So you get all of the content and all of what you need first, and then all the bells and whistles go on top for things that are able to handle that stuff. But you don't take away the content from from the reader.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I remember when progressive web apps, the term was kind of first coined by Google, Jeremy kind of was attacking them for like, this is not, you should be calling it progressive because it's progressive enhancement is one thing where there's a strict mindset around exactly what you described there. You can carry that forward when you're building a progressive web app so that you can actually still serve your customer as best you can because you have no idea what device or situation or how flaky the Wi-Fi is or not that they're coming on. You need to give them something as fast as you can. Sure.
Yeah, I saw, not to veer off a little bit though, but I did see like at the beginning of the summit, there was all these tweets going on. There was light show and everything, and Leon was like tweeting excitedly, like, "Oh, it's starting!" And I didn't get to see those talks then because I had to go into some meetings. But I think Paul Irish had done a talk, right, on performance. Did you guys catch that? Was there anything on Rail or Purple that was discussed?
Yeah, so it was Paul and Sam. They had a hilarious kind of banter back and forth for their talk, and they actually introduced what was it? MIPDIA was their other thing that
MIPDIA.
MIPDIA, right? What was it?
I don't even know what that stands for.
Another acronym I have to remember.
Measure, profile, diagnose, identify, attempt. So yeah, Sam was trying to wait to say MIPDIA throughout the conference. But.
Yeah, we had an internal joke going at the conference, which was like punch another thing off your bingo card, and it was like use the platform, Purple,
Rail, and the new acronym was basically.
Yeah, we created 2 new acronyms in our talk just to joke with it.
Nice.
Shared Polymer Component and SPC. John had DDD for Demo Driven Development. But yeah, it's kind of like all these acronyms are just acronyms, right? Like we've been web developers for, I'm going with 15 years. 15 years is my code word, 20 years.
Wow.
Like, these are just new acronyms to like kind of create focus to the problems, but we already know like how to make things faster. Like the web hasn't changed. Like obviously send less content down to the browser, you know, do the things that are important first and then lazy do the stuff that isn't important. And this is kind of like new acronyms for developers who are new to developing for the web. And it's important for them more than it is for us. And it's just funny, some of the acronyms like the purple. We actually, the day before our talk, we threw in a purple slide and just put the color purple matters. Like that's what we said. But yeah, that's kind of our feeling on it.
Yeah, and I guess back to Paul and Sam's talk too. The important thing there, and also like in Alex Russell's talk, was basically just emphasizing the need to actually measure the stuff you're doing. Like a lot of Paul and Sam's talk was around the fact that like, this is like a thing I read online about how to make your performance better. So let's actually try it and see if it actually impacts it in a positive or negative way or has no impact. I'm kind of going through that process and seeing, you know, does one change make a difference? Does when you combine them, does it make a difference? And like really how important it is to look at the profiler in Google and use web page test, which Chris and I have been spending a lot of time living in the profiler and web page test, just testing everything we do to make stuff faster. Because someone always says something is slow. We're just like, well, we're going to prove that we can get this thing down to as fast as possible.
Yeah.
On our side.
And even more than just the acronyms is like, know the browser and know the resource handler and the timeline and know how to use the tool so that you can figure out how to make the thing faster yourself. For us, like our critical path is getting data from the servers, because that can take 2 seconds. So that's why we spent time optimizing it so that we're making API calls as quickly as possible, even before presenting something to the users.
That's great.
And then most recently, like the big thing is have an actual phone and hook it up to your laptop and do the timeline from the phone, so you get actual resources for how long it takes. But the developer tools are great just to figure out how fast things are loading.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's 10 million different checks I have to do for each application. So I try to put as much as I can into a dev build, but there's web page test I'm always on, using the Google webmaster tools, having to check for SEO stuff, doing Lighthouse checking for that. There's all these different ones. It's so hard to keep up with all of it.
Yeah.
Yellow Lab Tools is another one that we've used internally as well. It's pretty nice.
I kind of wish I was a Java developer, right?
I never wish that.
It's so much easier working on the back end, but they get called more than we do.
So some good companies there. We have Comcast, obviously, ING, Vaden, Net-a-Porter, and USA Today. So there was Gannett, I guess. But they those talks were pretty great, right? So what did you guys think of the networking there? Like, what did you guys do socially? Did you meet a lot of these people? Obviously, you met our heroes.
Yeah, our heroes
over at Google. But how was it networking wise?
I would say it was pretty great, because it was easy to spot the other speakers. So, and then since we all kind of, especially the ones that are not part of Google, we just saw each other and we could instantly talk about problems we've encountered and what crazy stuff we had to overcome. Like talking to the folks at Gannett who decided they were going to use Polymer like a month before the opening ceremonies for the Olympics, and said we're going to ship this thing in 30 days. Like learn Polymer and ship it. I'm like, you guys are insane, and they're just like, you guys use 0.3. You guys are insane. Just like,
nice.
So everybody comparing notes, and then. I mentioned too, as soon as the first break happened on the first day, we ran over to talk to Ben from ING just to talk about.
Yeah, we talked to Ben for like a half an hour. It was great.
They had like a nice Ask Polymer section that was set up for the break time, where basically all the speakers would go there during the half-hour breaks, so you could just hang out with them, and anybody could go up and talk to them, and we talked to pretty much everybody there.
Did you guys get to do the code labs? Were they set up pretty well?
We didn't do the code labs.
Yeah, I walked by the room, but I didn't go in there just because most of them were before a talk, and any free time was spent focused on the talk. I was networking, but the rooms were pretty full.
Yeah, the conference was set up really well. They had a lot of fun space. They had that code lab area. Everywhere that you sat, they had power outlets for you to plug in. They had tons of Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi speed was great.
They even had a prayer room. And
they had a prayer room, a maternity room.
Everything.
They had lunch. It was a really well organized conference. The Google guys were above and beyond as far as hosting and everything. The downside, networking is always hard, especially at conferences, because I wish I could spend an afternoon talking to the ING guys or to the USA Today guys, and outside of the conference busyness, right? Because you're constantly wanting to watch the new talks while also talking to other people. But we did share business cards and everything, so hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, I didn't bring business cards. I just kept saying, "Hey, I'm on the Polymer Slack, so if you're not on there, join it, and just ping me if you want to talk." Because luckily Google has.
What was that guy's name again? Something John.
Yeah, if the Google guys are listening to this, we really need to have a hangout where we talk after the conference or a day before the conference as an internal summit where we can actually do dev to dev discussions rather than presentations.
Well, a lot of conferences, they'll have a dinner a night or 2 nights before. Did you guys have anything similar to that?
Yeah, they did have a speakers kind of dinner happy hour thing on Tuesday after the conference was over.
Yeah, they were supposed to have a pre-speaker dinner, but
we were all just
I don't know if we got one, or if we just got dropped off the invite, maybe. Who knows?
We wanted to go back and watch the Eagles game anyway, so that was Sunday night. But
priorities. And they lost too, right?
So that was not the best use of my time in London. I limited time there, but the speaker dinner was a nice perk because then it was after the conference was over, so everyone was kind of all the stress was done, and like we just talked to people. So like we had a good chat with Alex Russell and other folks at that for a while, which was really cool.
Yeah, Alex is really cool. And was Dimitri there as well? ClassCom?
I don't know.
So him, Alex K, I can't Komorski, and Alex Russell. They're the three people who really reimagined the HTC stuff and put it into web components as a spec. With several specs. So they have a lot of history. The three of them.
Yeah, Alex Russell was there. And I would have to look up a picture of the other guy. So, but Leon was definitely there. So I'll give a shout out to Leon. He follows me. We meet up in Germany. We meet up in London. Hopefully, he'll come visit me in Philadelphia at some point. He has an open invite.
Who's stalking who, right?
I know. Yeah, I go to the conference and I'm sitting down in the audience, and I'm like, he's two chairs down from me. I'm like, what, Leon? What are you doing here in London? It's like, hey. Yeah, and he does the vanilla web component stuff. So we had a conference in Germany where he was giving a vanilla web component talk, and I was giving my Polymer spiel, and it was great just hearing what you can do with vanilla web components. So.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He has a lot of, like, you should check out his GitHub. I don't know if you have already, but he's got some really great ideas. Like his router is interesting. So yeah, Trey Shugart from Atlassian was there. You know, he is like the team lead for Skate, which is an awesome library. So I don't know if you guys met him.
No, I didn't meet him.
And you know, Michael Blay, who did the Firebase talk, he used to be the CEO of DivShot. If you guys remember that,
right?
Yeah, we talked to Michael Blay.
They were huge web components fans, like even before he got hired at Google.
Yeah, I love Firebase. I'm just throwing that out there too. Firebase is amazing.
His talk was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and the Polymer elements. His talk was great. The whole salesman pitch.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He's a funny guy.
And they still sponsor the. He brought the Static Showdown hackathon over to Google too, so hopefully that'll happen January-ish.
Yeah.
So did you have a favorite talk? You know, what was that and why?
Oh man, favorite. It's so hard.
I think we're going the ING one. Ben's ING talk was one of the most important or most influential just because of hearing. Yeah, we loved hearing how he had the same problems in ING and how they're moving towards more of a component-based model. So you don't design the entire page, design the piece that's in the page, the component that exists in there, and then we can reuse it. And then we can also have teams building just that component and another team building just the component. And then we put the components together. And the whole, assemblers first and craftsmen second is just like something that we're now running with that same thing as well to share with everybody else in our organization.
That's great. Yeah, I like that idea as well. One of the challenges I've had is like if I want to build components to share, a lot of people, they want to do these big things, right? They'll do something complex, but that sort of model really lends itself to making smaller pieces, which aren't as exciting.
Correct.
I think to some developers. Right. So it's definitely a mind shift there.
Yeah, I'd say that talk was definitely the most applicable for what we could do as a takeaway to go back and like directly apply to our code. I thought Alex Russell's talk on adapting the mobile web for the future present was great too. Kind of just to get people, a good thing to like have the people watch to get in the mindset of like really understand how low powered a phone is.
Phones are different.
To be developing for.
Yes.
That one really struck a chord with me, and we kind of hit it off just talking about,
And it's always the argument, well, we always everyone that uses our app is in the United States, and we're in our bubble. and we don't need to put developer time into that. And
but then you don't know what kind of Wi-Fi they're gonna have. Or yeah, so that's a good thing to get people angry and get people inspired.
I get angry a lot. That's my role, is to go around Comcast angry.
It's like the accessibility talks too you have with management, right?
Yeah. Luckily, we have a really good accessibility department here at Comcast.
Yeah, accessibility is an important thing here.
But that took.
Yeah, it's important to some people here, and some people it's it's not as important.
Yeah. No, it is extremely important inside of Comcast. Also because it's governed by law too, I think, for cable companies. So we do a great job, making sure that our sites are accessible first.
Yeah. Before the government regulation was there, it was a little harder. It was more kind of me getting angry at people. But then once the top down was like accessibility, it was like, oh, this is great.
Yes.
Have people.
Then we can prioritize it.
That are pushing for this, which has been awesome.
Yeah. And then Paul Lewis did his talk, which was great.
That was mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's always great. Surma too.
How are these guys so smart? How are they so fast?
Yeah, I mean, Surma said, at least he said that they had written all the code in advance, so they kind of knew what code to write, but they didn't rehearse what they're going to say. They just kind of winged it for the whole hour and a half that it was. But it was an entertaining talk. And
that was kind of the fun thing, like having the Google speakers and the non-Google speakers, like us common people. And it's funny because we're in the audience watching all these Googlers going like, Rob Dotson does these polycasts all the time, gets thousands of views. Eric Beidelman, like these guys are speakers. They're just that's what they do, is speaking. Yeah, they're polished speakers. They have no fears. They don't sweat at all. They look good under the lights.
Even in non-coding positions, like I shouldn't say non-coding, but not as intense coding, like like Matt McNulty and
developer advocates.
Taylor Savage, they're awesome as well. Like it's like
spend a lot of time.
The whole team is very polished,
except for Monica. Monica, she has a little. She got to work on her tongue a little bit. She gets a little.
She's awesome. She is.
I haven't met Monica yet.
She's really cool.
Yeah, she's really cool.
Full of energy.
I warned her a few times. I'm like, Monica, my 2-year-old son is going to be watching this, so like, try to keep the intro PG, okay?
Just throw up an emoji and don't say it.
Yeah, throw up an emoji.
Her talk from last year, I still will do this. I direct some people to her talk from last year's Polymer Summit around like basically building a styling system for Polymer. Like that was awesome talk. And as Matthew said, you can slow her down with YouTube, but I mean, I talk fast too, but I think sets the record. But yeah, she's awesome. She's an asset to the team for sure.
So definitely the consensus is the ING talk.
Yeah, ING talk. Yeah, ING talk was the most applicable, and I really enjoyed Alex's. And then physical web, I'm kind of I've never saw it before too.
Physical web.
That's been at a bunch of conferences, but that was my first time seeing it, and that was got me thinking too. Got the wheels turning in my head. But
I finally got around to going to Justin Ribeiro's blog. He's a host on the show as well, and he wrote actually about a lot of that stuff that was covered.
Oh, cool!
Like he wrote about it in September. And I was like, I finally got to read it, so I would have been much more informed having watched that. but you should check it out if it's just justinribeiro.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Stuff on that. So as far as like other conferences, like I'm really psyched. I'm going to the Chrome Dev Summit, so I'm going to get to see some Googlers too. Again, I haven't been to a Google conference since I/O last year. So I'm pretty excited. How does this compare, Polymer Summit, compare to other conferences you guys have been to?
Well, I first want to say, like, we spend a lot of time doing our slides for our presentation that we gave. And for some reason, the Google guys do their slides. They draw their own slides, or they put their own slides together, and they look so much better than ours. And I don't know if that's just
because, though, to be fair, they have
I'm like a normal person or something. John at least is a UX designer, so that's why I brought him in. Like,
graphic designer in a previous life. So.
Help with the slides, make them look good. But yeah, their slides are just so great. And like even the Chrome Dev Summit, like I watch all the videos from them because they're such great videos and great tutorials and like great this is the future of what's going to be coming, that it's so important to watch them all the time.
Yeah. I'll say the one nice thing about this conference too, compared to other ones that like Chris and I have been at this year, I've been in the past, is they curated this in a way, like they knew, probably 3/4 of speakers were Google, so they kind of knew the story they wanted to tell in the arc of that, and they put in the other speakers from outside. So it was kind of a nice story throughout it, as opposed to and I like the fact that it was one track. So it's like you're there, you're gonna pay attention. This is what you're gonna, and they were all quality talks.
Yeah.
We've been to other, like JavaScript conferences that usually have multiple tracks, which is kind of cool. You get to see what you want. But then there's just so much going on. Like there's React talks and Angular talks and Vue talks and
mobile
talks, and there's just so much. Yeah. I like the focus of this, the fact that it was all Polymer and web components. And Google obviously has a big budget, so they said it was pretty experience.
Finally, you're in a place where web devs don't look at you and go, "Why are you using web components?"
Yeah,
yeah, right.
Which is nice.
There's a lot of people there.
Wait, use Polymer? There's not a check mark there. It's just
isn't that like bleeding edge technology or something?
Yeah,
yeah, we're in the future. And then they had no break between each of the talks too, which was really impressive. That they finished one talk, and as soon as they finished, Monica would come up on stage and introduce the next one, and immediately switch over to the next talk. So
yeah, they are all really good at that transition. Like something goes wrong, somebody covers pretty quick.
Yeah,
I noticed that at I/O last year too. Like so, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if any talk was more than half an hour, it was like because it had to be. So just as opposed to some conferences, or feel like they just say the speaking spot is 50 minutes and you must fill it, and that kind of forces some content in there. And this was a good use of time.
So I mean, the whole, I guess most of the Polymer team is over in San Francisco. What did you guys think of them hosting it in Europe again? Like this would be the second time.
So we couldn't complain about being jet lagged because they were more jet lagged than us. But
yeah, that's 5-hour time zone difference.
But yeah, I mean, for us, it was a cool opportunity to go there. No one was awake to see the live stream where they could catch the video, afterwards.
My wife was awake. She woke up at 6:30 to watch it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. You were able to go with family?
Well, my wife is she's 9 months pregnant right now, so she wasn't able to travel with me to London. I have my parents there though, which all developers make mistakes. My parents wanted me to say that. Don't bring your parents.
Bring your parents to Polymer Summit Day. I guess.
Yeah, they were actually there in the audience in the front row watching. My dad recorded video the whole time. Like I'm like, Dad,
you were so good, son. That's great, though. I mean, he obviously, they love you, so that's great.
They're very proud. They're very proud. But yeah, so I actually was just in Germany like a month before for the Typo 3 conference, and just like a totally different atmosphere and vibe. I like the Typo 3 one because it was more personal. Like you basically shared. Everybody was staying at this hostel, and they had the food together, so you had big eating opportunities to talk to a lot of people. But the conference was really well run by the Google guys. Being in London, the time zone obviously is the big thing. And the other thing for us is originally we weren't allowed to go because it's outside of Comcast's footprint.
Right.
So luckily we were invited to speak. Otherwise, we're not able to go next year basically.
Yeah.
In Europe.
Basically, Comcast won't pay for us to go. We could go
on our own time
and pay on ourselves, but it was that's just Comcast.
Oh, Comcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk to some people.
It's been really, really cool here. Like Carfax has been they give us like developer hours to work on open source or whatever on Fridays.
Nice.
And they have a whole budget just for these type of things. So they're paying for me to go to San Francisco. I'm pretty excited.
Good
yeah.
deal.
Can you come?
We're able to go to conferences in the United States.
Right. But since they don't use Comcast cable over there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or any products.
But yeah,
all right.
Let's see. How do we compare it to other conferences? We used to go to JS Conf.
Yeah.
And that was a great conference for like part vacation, part learning, because they would do like a day of talks and then a day off and then a day of talks. And that was great.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and because of that though, like I've had some friends from this area who because the guy who runs it, Chris, I can't remember his last name.
Yeah,
but he's like he does a lot of Node botnet stuff now on Node. But he lives in this area where we are. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of people know him, and so I had some friends who went and they're like, yeah, we volunteered to help and we brought our whole family down.
Yeah,
and we just,
that's what we did.
Yeah, we
enjoy the time in Florida, and I'm like, wow, that's really great. I'd love to go. I haven't been to JSConf yet.
It was funny,
but the first one was here in Arlington,
Mhm.
it's not far from where we are in Virginia here.
Yeah, one nice thing about JSConf being so family oriented was, so my wife and kids would like go to the pool, and like other people, significant others would. So like I met Kevin Old through like my wife meeting his wife at the pool. Their kids were playing together at JSConf, which is kind of just a nice impact for when you have a family friendly conference. It actually creates more networking opportunities because you've got significant others kind of just networking because they're hanging out, and then
you get to talk about your kids.
Yeah.
And also, it's like, I know when I go away, my wife has to watch both the kids and do everything. It's like twice as much work, and so I would love it. It really is. So I would love it, like to have that out, like, and then you can go home, tell the kids what a good time you had, and same place.
I think we got to talk more about Polymon too, because I think that was a great thing that they built to kind of make networking more a reality, because they wanted it so that you have to walk up to the Google developers and be like, hey, can I scan your badge and talk to you while I scan your badge?
Oh yeah, that's like in fraternities where they have those things where you go and you find this brother and ask this question.
Yeah, exactly. that was the whole concept behind it, was to increase networking.
How do we incentivize networking for the Google team? It's kind of
that's brilliant.
Yeah, but it was kind of, because they had a speaker room where all the Google developers would kind of stay at, even when the talks were over. They were kind of hang out in there, and it's like, you got to escape the room and go out and talk to people.
So we could catch all the Polymon because we knew where they were.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of developers, they really get freaked out by getting up and on stage, and I've talked to a lot of really smart, really cool developers who are just like, yeah, I can't, I don't want to do that, and so it's easy for us, I think, to kind of
we're kind of introverted too.
Introverted version of us.
I'm a lot introverted.
But you can act for an hour and then get out of that shell.
Well, and that's the cool part, is like when you're talking developer to developer, like two introverted people, like it's a lot easier to communicate, especially when you're talking about nerdy things like Polymon and progressive web apps and Polymer. Like it's something that you know about.
Yeah, and it's always easier to talk to someone when it's just a small group or a one-on-one rather than being a large group. That's always less daunting, I think.
Yeah.
So as far as like web components, I think there's a big push to talk about the specs and things. Was beta.webcomponents.org covered?
They did mention.
They did mention. I think Taylor mentioned that.
That was in his keynote, and then it kind of. I think
he's been working hard on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to try to get away from the elements and having the Google Polymer elements as their own thing, and more be like a huge collective of, here's all the web components that exist, and that makes sense.
Yeah, one thing I'm curious about is if, I guess they said it's open source, so we could potentially like work and have our own internal version, because we right now use like a half-baked version of their element catalog to host all of ours and allow people to browse it. So if they're,
you certainly can.
Yeah.
It's on the webcomponents.org GitHub, and it's just called beta.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so maybe on board.
It does have a Python backend too, and it uses the Google App Engine. So
okay,
gotcha.
Yeah, Google is Python, but it's not in Go. It's in Python or Java.
Yeah, we were also approached by like the gold standards of web components. So there's this notion that you don't want the fragmentation that normally happens when you have open source stuff, where you have hundreds of different competing versions of software. So there's a concept of like having a web component approach the gold standard, which means like it's certified like high accessibility, high testing standards, like this is the component you should use, kind of a deal.
Yeah, I think you talked about it on the podcast before, if I remember.
Yeah, several times, but last week we did a lot. And I was surprised Jeremy had actually gone through all of it too, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's going to be important.
That's also on the webcomponents.org GitHub as well. Jan from Component Kitchen actually set that up originally. He did most of the work on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met Jan.
We met him.
Rob too, as well.
And Rob.
Yeah, I haven't met Rob yet. I almost met Jan. Like I saw him and then I didn't meet him. But he's going to be speaking. He's going to be speaking at the Web Components remote conference. So I'll definitely. Well, I don't know if Rob is, but Jan will definitely be.
I think I'm speaking on that too. I don't think Leon has confirmed me as a speaker yet.
Okay, so you're confirmed.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I think I'm speaking for the Web Remote Conf too.
So yes, so you definitely
coming out on the podcast.
Trey will be on there as well. If you want to know more about it, it's wcremoteconf.com. And so far, I think we have Rob, Trey Shugart, Jan, Raphael Rougeron, who did Bosonic, and I forget, but there's a few people on there, and there's no details as far as schedules yet or anything because we haven't gone through all of the different CFPs. But Justin, Leon, and I are hosting that. We're going to be working with people and going through that. And November 1st is the new date to submit to. So if you do have an idea and you want to submit to this conference, it's online, so you don't have to travel anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is really nice, I think. I got some help from Charles Max Wood, who did the other remote comps, like allremoteconfs.com, if you want to see what he has, React and JavaScript. And so he had a lot of really great ideas he shared with us. So thank you for that, Charles. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be in February. It's going to be 2 days. We don't know what the price is yet. It just depends on what the costs are for us. So, and I think if there's any profit, it'll go to Stickman, who's been fronting a lot of the money. So that'll be good though. And the future of Polymer, web components and development, a lot has changed since Polymer 1 was released, right, to now. What do we kind of see for the future moving forward? Because I think a lot of the application mindset has moved more towards let's build everything in React from Angular, and Polymer has sort of taken, it's still like very popular, but a lot of people still consider it maybe too cutting edge, which is kind of scary to me because it's been like production ready for how long now?
For 2.5 years since it's been experimental.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started in 0.3, and that was really rocky, but it changed so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the tooling and everything's there. So as far as like the future of web components, I think the big thing is just getting all the browsers to adopt the API and have it be built into all the latest browsers is like the next major step for me. Because again, my argument for why web components over even React is, once web components are in the browsers, you're going to get much better speed than you will with your normal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or whatever React's doing under the hood. And the other fact is, I don't really have any build tools that have to convert my web component to something else before giving it to the browser. So on a couple of our projects here, we don't have any preprocessors going, which I love. We write some components, and you just view it in the browser. So it's a lot faster and easier to do development that way.
That's like how I started doing HTML, right?
Yeah, it's like
exactly. Yeah.
Going back to our roots, how we did it in the past.
And that's what I love about it too. Is it's just so it's getting more towards our roots.
Yeah, and this is the first time, and really the big thing about web components is just being able to share code on the front end. We've never had that before, where you can share HTML, JavaScript, and CSS in one kind of package. Like every time we wanted to recreate a carousel, which in Comcast we've done carousel so many times.
And everyone is the last carousel.
Yeah,
right.
It never works out that way.
Right. Yeah.
It was just so much work to share code. And yeah, now we're facing the other problem with web components, which is now we have the ability to share code. How do we make it easier to share that code? And that becomes like the next challenge.
Yeah, I'd say that the kind of two things I look forward to for the future is, one is with browser support and older versions of IE dropping off the planet and people not having to support them anymore, that'll help kind of push Polymer even be adopted more, because that was one of the initial kind of pushbacks in Comcast a couple years ago, was the fact that, we need to support IE9 or even IE8. So it's just like Polymer was a non-starter, but at least on Xfinity Home, you needed WebSockets, so we could go with Polymer because IE10 had supported Polymer and WebSockets. So I think that'll kind of help when that conversation is no longer needs to be had. Just like all the browsers people are using support Polymer, so that stuff's going to help. And I think
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. We'll touch on that.
No, I mean, I was going to ask just about that, particularly like Comcast Infinity. Is that like the browser on the television, like going through and figuring out what shows to select and things like that?
So yeah, when we say like Xfinity is like the name of like the Comcast products. So the if you go to the web and go to Watch TV, so that's all built in Polymer, and then Xfinity Home, which is like your home security and home automation, that's all built Polymer as well. And that was the first one that did it, and that uses WebSockets. So that's how we got around the using Polymer 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, because IE10 and above is what had WebSockets. So
wow. So as we get closer to the remote conference, we should definitely do an episode talking about that sort of stuff and how you guys work through that, because I would imagine that's not an easy feat. It's probably easy now because you know what to do, right? But
through the pains of like
getting there, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of change. Like even with web components, it's the knowledge base and growing the knowledge base of how to write applications that are written with web components. And I think the Polymer team has done a great job with their shop app and their starter kit demoing and showing people like, this is how you would do it without a framework such as Angular or React. And here's how you do routing. And they're giving you a lot of those components nowadays. And when we first started with 0.3, it's like we had to figure all that stuff out. And we had to figure out, how do you organize the app? And where do you put the data? And how do they talk to each other? And I think a lot of that stuff is now known, and we can share with other people.
Yeah, I mean, one thing too, like speaking of that shop app, I remember I saw a tweet yesterday or the day before from Rob Dotson, and it was an older tweet though, but he had said on there, he was talking about, he had some questions that he did, like an interview panel. Did you guys see that one? Where they were up there and answered Q&A basically, and he was he was the moderator. So there was a clip from that about SEO, and I was like, okay, this is pertinent to what I'm working on now. And just to go, stay with me, because I'm gonna say, last episode we talked about the shop app, and we said it's just one. If you view source this thing, like before it gets JavaScripted all to craziness, it's just one element, right? And I talked about how that was like really frustrating working with Polymer 3 or 5 or whatever it was to try and go back and forth with just attribute IO, like going to like component to component. I had like so many it was my design problem, but but they had the shop app. It was just one thing, and so I was really curious. How does the Google search engine see that? And if you look, it'll search through everything.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And
Google
that really surprised me.
JavaScript. So it executes the JavaScript and renders the whole page before it actually does the SEO for it.
Up to a certain point, basically. I think what Taylor said.
Yeah. It has to load pretty quickly.
Correct.
In order to do that. So that was impressive to me. I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Because typically, otherwise, if it doesn't work, then whatever's in the light DOM, like if you're using your shadow DOM slots, whatever's there, that'll be parsed, right? But everything else won't.
Yeah, and
so
this is
it was pretty cool.
Of learning like how to do web component sites. When we first started, we used to believe like everything needs to be a web component, and you would do the My App major container, which has all other components inside of it. And our point with like get back to our roots is like you shouldn't be doing that. You still need like an H1 tag that says this is the name of my site, and then have a web component. Or you could have multiple web components on the main level, like one for showing a login page, one for your main app. Like break them up into smaller pieces so that when you get to the main page, the user has some content without the web components all having to initialize. Because it takes a lot of time.
a great way to kind of look at this is atomic design, or you look at it as even if you go to the repos for Polymer, right, and you look at the Polymer Elements repos, right, and look at the iron elements. Those are typically smaller pieces.
Yep.
Yeah.
Typically, there's some that aren't, but so I mean that even if you look at something as simple as an item, like a list item, right, there is a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, and so because a lot of people were like, well, I don't want to build some rinky dinky small thing. I could just use this for something else for. But I mean, those small pieces help build everything else. The iron list, iron stuff, that's all used inside of paper, right? I believe at least.
Yeah.
And then they dress it up.
Yeah, a lot of the paper.
So it's all composed.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that we joke about. Like the hardest thing about learning web components is the encapsulation and the reusability. Like getting out of our mindset as JavaScript developers of I have one giant script and one DOM to work with, and figuring out how do I make that small component, and how does that component talk to another component, and how do I do it in the right way so that I can reuse it. That's really hard.
It is. Is there anything else that we missed on this? Like, I think we covered everything.
I have one more thing I want to talk about for the future if I can peer into my crystal ball.
Uh-oh.
I feel like the one thing, I don't know when it's going to happen, but like they're basically...
It's almost Halloween.
Go ahead.
Halloween.
Here it is.
My magical
crystal ball.
I think there's going to be a catalyst at some point that's going to basically help project the popularity of Polymer in the future. And it's going to be either, some other new framework will come along that's going to basically upset Angular or React, or something will fall apart there. That'll basically have people be like upset with the whole framework mindset, and then just think, oh, maybe I should try the web components thing because that's more core to the browser. That's my hope, at least. Is any change needs a catalyst. My hope is that something.
Yeah.
Not that I want to see React or Angular bad together. Our industry, there's major things that happen every few years, and that's how no one knows what the next framework will be in 5 years. I mean, something will happen, and I'm hoping that will kind of be
most definitely. Something will definitely.
Anything is true that something crazy will happen and disrupt the way that we do work. But I'm hoping that something will then lead to kind of Polymer web components blooming even more.
Yeah, I second that. And, I'm kind of at the point, like I originally was like Polymer, and now I'm like web components, web components, web components. Because Polymer is not really the important thing. The important thing was the web components. And you see that with like the new libraries, Skate.js, Bosonic, Xtags, Polymer. Like there's all these little libraries which are making it easier to do web components. But I think there is a lot of momentum starting with, web components.
There's a lot of good ones built on Polymer, even like Strand is great. There's Predix UI we had on the show too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people using it, and like it's kind of the thing. Like React and Angular, they do have purposes, and they serve their purposes. Like Angular, if you're writing a really complicated app or you're writing a really complicated website, like Angular. But if you're doing the majority of websites out there, keep it simple.
I don't know what happened there.
little on the internet.
Of course, when we have more than 2 viewers.
Comcast, yeah.
I had to say one more thing, didn't I?
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right though. All right, so I think we're going to wrap up. Sorry, I think we went over a little bit over time.
No problem.
If people want to find you guys, what are your Twitter handles, and how can people get in touch with you to talk about web components and Comcast?
All right. Again, I'm Chris Lorenzo. My Twitter handle is Chief, ChiefCll. Those are my initials.
And I'm John Riv, JOHNRIV, on most of the internet. So the best spots to find me are on Twitter or in the Polymer Slack.
Yeah, I'm also in the Polymer Slack as well.
I'm in there too, but I'm usually like not on the main channel half the time.
Yeah.
And if people should just find you on Twitter then, both you guys?
Right. That'll get the notification on all my devices and in my face. So.
Yep.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
This has been episode 112, Polymer Summit 2016. See ya.